Okay, so first of all, thank you guys for being here. Like I told you guys before, this is just basically me doing like a little assignment that we have with Soul, which is Shadows of Light on the retreat that we actually had the opportunity of going to. And I know you guys kind of know what I'm talking about because I spoke briefly about it. Some of the other members and I spoke briefly about it at Assembly, but it wasn't really in depth, and that's kind of what I want to do today. Okay, so to begin, when we first opened up the whole retreat, we actually started with a quote by Herman Spencer, which was, "The great aim of education is not knowledge but action." And so basically I just mentioned that because that's kind of like what we're doing here. What I'm doing basically is that one of our teachers who is Saad, he really wants us to practice this idea of passing down our knowledge, not only keeping it for ourselves. Okay, and so with that, I'm just going to start with Suratul Asr. So one of the very interesting things that our teachers started, the guy who was teaching us started with, is that Imam Shafi'i actually said that if Suratul Asr were the only surah revealed to us by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that surah would have been enough. It would have sufficed us. It would have literally been enough to sustain us spiritual-wise. And that's so amazing. And when he said that, it was like shocking almost, even though I've kind of heard it, but you don't really think about it. So like in my mind, I was thinking, you have all of these surahs in the Quran. You have Surah Al-Baqarah, you have Surah Al-Imran, you have all of these surahs that are so big, and we look at them as so big in size. And so I feel like we kind of pay a little more attention to those surahs. We kind of take a little more time reading them or whatever. Even Ramadan, when we're thinking about, we have to read a lot of Quran, we always go towards the big surahs, and we don't even realize that we can read small surahs and they can have just as big of an impact. Obviously, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if Imam Shafi'i is saying that this surah would have been enough for Allah to convey all that He wanted us to know as His servants. Okay, so starting with the first ayah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, "Wal Asr." And the interesting thing about this is that He's swearing on time. And the reason that's so interesting is because, like, okay, for example, when we swear, what are things that we swear on? Like when we swear to each other, like what
things?
Yeah, like what?
Like
I swear I'll do it. Yeah, like we never say a specific thing, right? We're always like I swear. And then what's so interesting about that is that not only does Allah swear, not only does He swear on something, right? One of His creations. Time is His creation, but He swears on something that we don't think of as His creation. Do you get it? We think of like, Allah created me, Allah created you, but we never really sit there and think that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created time. Do you know what I'm saying? Isn't that amazing? You know, we're always like, Allah created this, Allah created the skies, and we look to all these things, but we never sit back and say, Allah is time. He created time. Like everything that we're living in is time is I mean, like our lifetime. Like time is the reason many of us are here, right? It's a limited time that we have, and He is the creator of that. So that's one of the things that's so interesting about it. The other thing that's interesting about it is that in the Arabic language, there's this thing about Arabic. There are many words, and you'll have like one translation of that word in English. That's why you always hear people say, like, even for the Quran, that's why you always hear people say there's no way to translate the Quran in English, because English is such a small language when it comes to depth and compared to Arabic. And so what's so interesting about that is He actually showed that to us. And for example, He gave us like these different words for time. He gave us waqt, which is time in like minutes and seconds. He gave us lahda, which is time, another Arabic word for time, but that means in the moment. And then the interesting thing about that, He gave us some other ones too. But the interesting thing about the time that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala swore on is Asr. And what's so interesting about that is Asr is time that squeezes you. And it also has the same root word as the word for juice in Arabic, which is Asir. And what is juice known for? What do you do with juice? You squeeze juice. And so this time is a time that's squeezing us. So what He's telling us is that mankind is being squeezed by time. And what's so interesting, another interesting thing about that is a quote by Henry David Thoreau. He actually says, like, you and me, or they think that time goes, but time is staying, and we're actually the ones that are going. The thing about that is, like, when we were learning about it, you kind of just realize, like, how much we don't even realize, like, that our time is literally limited. You know how we're always like, I'll get back to it tomorrow. Because we have this idea, I mean, we talk about it like everyone's going to die, but we have this idea that we have so much time, when in reality we don't. And one of the interesting stories that he actually told us is there was a companion, and I think he said around Suratul Asr, there was a companion who, some guy came up to him and he asked him, if you knew that you would die tomorrow, what would you do differently than you did today, or that you are doing today? And the companion actually replied, if I knew that I were to die tomorrow, I would do nothing different than I'm doing today, because I already live as if I'm going to die.
Wow.
So like that right there, that hit me because I was thinking like, you get what I was saying, like we know the fact that we know we're gonna die. We're like, oh yeah, we know we're gonna die and stuff, but we don't really. It's almost like we don't really know we're gonna die because none of us live like we're dying. And so I remember one time, one of my friends and I were actually having a discussion, and someone asked me the same thing. They were like, actually asked all of us the same thing. We're all in a car driving somewhere. They're like, well, if you knew you were gonna die tomorrow, what would you do? We were like, we'd spend our whole life in sujood. We were like, well, duh, if you're gonna die tomorrow, why would you not pray to Allah the whole time if you know that you're gonna die? And here's this guy saying, he didn't even say that he spends his whole time in sujood. He said, I'm already living like I'm gonna die tomorrow. So why would I have to do anything differently? That's already how I'm living. Wow. And so that in itself was amazing. The second ayah, which is translated as the human being is in loss. Now, what's so interesting about this ayah is that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said the human being is in loss, the word that he used for human is, what is the word that he used for human? So, innal insana lafil khusr, right? Insan. So what is the other, when you say people, what is the word for people? Nas. And nas. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says insan. So if he's talking about every human being in loss, right? The reason that he used that, he's saying insan, like when you're in loss, no matter if you're in a big group of people, you're always gonna feel lost. So he didn't use the word nas because he's saying like when you're not guided towards the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, even if you're in a group of friends, all of us are gonna individually feel lost. So all of us could be lost together, but we're not gonna feel like we're all lost together. We're all gonna feel like we're individually lost together. Do you get it? Thing is the word that he uses for loss. So when he says innal insana lafil khusr, right? The very last word is loss, but it's not just like any loss, like I lost my shoe or something. The loss that he's talking about is a sense of urgency. Like you're in. It's like a wake up call. It's like you're in loss and you need to get out of that loss right now. And so then we go on to the third ayah. Do one of you guys want to read it? Yeah. And so that's translated as accept those who believe, do good, enjoin on each other truth, and enjoin on each other patience. And so what's so interesting about that is like in the very first part of the before we even get to that, in that ayah, you see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he's talking about when he says except for those, the word that he uses is a word that it seems like it's for a plural group. It seems like it's plural. It seems like it's for a group of people. Whereas in the first ayah, he used the word human being and not people, right? Because he was saying, because what did that mean? What did I say that meant? Human being. Yeah. Why did he use the word for one person instead of a group of people?
It means all of us.
Yeah. Like why? Remember what I told you guys? He used it for one person instead of a group of people because when you're in loss, even if you're with a group of your friends, the fact that all of you are going to be individually lost. It's not going to be like, for example, you know how some rappers, they try to rap about, we're all going to go to hell together. Little do they realize that when you're in hell, that's you in hell by yourself. No matter how many people you think are in hell with you, you're going to feel like you're the only one going through the pain. Do you know what I mean? So what's interesting about that is in contrast, in the third ayah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses the word that he uses except for those. He's talking about it as if it's a group of people. And the reason for that is even if you're the only one who believes in your group of friends, you're still going to feel like there's a lot of you. Even if you're the one single person who's doing good, who's on the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, even if you're the only one, instead of you feeling lonely, you're going to feel like you're with a group of people. Because as long as you have Allah, you're always going to feel like, you're always going to feel comfortable. You're never going to feel alone. We see that Allah isn't only talking about except for those who believe and do good, but he also talks about those who advise one another and those who do good and enjoy patience. And what's so interesting about that is like oftentimes we feel like, sometimes we feel like, okay, so for example, when we're in our Iman high, like for example, if you go to a conference and you're on that Iman high, we sometimes feel like we need to get away from the world. You get it? Because have you ever felt like no one understands your problems, and in order to get close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it needs to be just you and Allah? That's one portion of it. But sometimes we don't even realize that when we block ourselves away from the world, that's not necessarily us always getting close to Allah. Because in order to fulfill the deed, you need to be around your community as well. You need to do things for your community. It's not like it's a religion just for you. It's something that you need to be practicing with other people, and it makes it a lot easier as well. And then one of the most interesting things is qusr, which means breaking. And what was so interesting about that, and he was saying in order to break, when he's talking about that breaking, he's talking about actually breaking your ego. So he's saying you need to break out of your ego in order to do those good things, in order to get closer to Allah. And so I was like, whoa, where's all this coming from? No, but honestly, I'm gonna end here. One of the most interesting things about the retreat for me was like how important Arabic is. And like, I mean, all of us, we go to an Islamic school and stuff, and we see Arabic class. Even the fact that they changed the schedule. Remember how Arabic and Islamic studies used to be at the front, and they changed it, and now it's right before lunch. Some people were saying that's because some of the high schoolers would skip Arabic and Islamic studies. They would purposely come to school late. And so that and so many other factors just show us like sometimes we feel like it's a drag and we're just doing it for the grade, even with Islamic studies and with Quran, and especially with Arabic. We don't even realize that without this language, it's almost like impossible to fulfill your deen. It's literally, I want to say it's impossible. Because the way that he broke it down, and this is just Suratul Asr, I didn't even explain it as well as he did. But for Suratul Fatiha, the first ayah, we literally spent 3 hours on just that. And that's through knowing Arabic. And so that's like, subhanAllah, one language can have that much depth. But I mean, thank you guys for coming.